Good morning. My name is Kyle. This is Auditing with Autism, where I put a camera on my shoulder and talk about my experiences in the world. Today I wanted to talk about a little bit about one of my favorite all-time quotes. It is actually my number one favorite quote in the world all time, and I have to tell you, I have a lot of quotes. I even started a quote book because of my love for quotes. And I know that some people think this is just parroting, but to be honest, these quotes organize my thoughts around what I'm trying to think about, which is usually centered around the quote. And so there are so many people that are so much smarter than me that have thought about things and quoted them perfectly. So I'm thinking, why not take advantage of that? If I'm ever good enough to come up with my own quotes and my own original thinking like that, well, that would just be the epitome of happiness for me. So I just wanted to talk about my favorite quote, and it happens to be from an Aboriginal saying. Now, this quote I found on a t-shirt when I was in my early 20s, and it was one of those shopping moments where, like a ray of sunshine landed on the shirt, and I knew I had to get it immediately after seeing this shirt because of the quote. It was discovered in a street fair situation, so the shirt was, casually flying around in the marketplace, as it were, before I found it. Well, the shirt has some Aboriginal sand paintings on the front, a really nice image and sort of a spatial shape. And the quote says, "The more you know, the less you need." It's so good. The more you know, the less you need. And I get it. I got it immediately when I heard that. And I get it. And it's like I live my life by that quote. I think about that quote, at least once a week, if not daily. Subconsciously, I'm always thinking about that quote and living my life uh, by that quote. It makes so much sense to me. And why? Because not just, well, on two senses of the words, in a physical sense and in a spiritual sense. First, second, two senses. Yeah. In the physical sense, I mean, it seems really obvious. The more you know, then the less you'll need. I think as a farmer, so like immediately I'm thinking, yeah, agriculture, the history of agriculture. The more we knew about agriculture, the less we needed to seek food, and the less food scarcity we had, which was fantastic for our bellies, and the ability to create cities, which allowed us to create technology and move forward with our knowledge. So the more we know, the less we need, in the sense of agriculture was for sure uh, legitimate. That saying holds true, you know. So the second sense, in a spiritual sense, which is how I took it originally, and I've always thought of it, the more you know about your spiritual life, your internal life, the less you need in your physical life. And that's the irony, the sort of like the paradox. It's interesting. When I share this quote with different people, different types of people throughout my life, I found it extremely interesting to discover how other minds interpret the quote. The standout memory is when I had just bought the shirt, and I was wearing the T-shirt, and I was wearing the T-shirt when I was playing soccer, and I had made a mistake on the soccer field where I kicked a little proprioception. I kicked the ball a little too low, the soccer ball, and so I ended up kicking the dirt, with my tennis shoe, my foot. Long story short, I broke a metatarsal bone in my foot, fractured it. And so I went to the doctor, And I was in a different city. I can't remember where I was, but I went to the clinic. I just went to a quick service. I knew it wasn't too bad, but I needed something. So I go into not my normal doctor, right? Just a clinic guy, and he comes in and he starts. Well, the first thing he does is he sees my T-shirt and he starts making a judgment about the quote. I couldn't believe this either. I'm thinking, this is definitely not my doctor. I can't believe any doctor is talking to people this way, but that's sort of beside the point. What he said was, he looked at the quote and he said, "Well, that's stupid." And I was, of course, offended in many different ways, but I focused on the T-shirt and I said, "Why is that?" And the doctor said, "Well, of course you're going to need more as you know more. The more you know, the more you need." And I was like, yeah, he's thinking about it on the physical term, and he still doesn't even get it on that sense, on the physical sense. And I thought to myself, well, here's a man who's much smarter than me. He's a doctor. He's got much more money than I do. I'm in my early 20s, and I'm thinking this guy clearly does not have it all together. I mean, he's got a lot of physical things, and but he doesn't have kindness. He didn't have compassion, and he didn't seem to have a spiritual clarity that was always has been important to me, and it seems like it should be important to all of us. So that T-shirt, all-time favorite T-shirt, all-time favorite quote. It's the kind of T-shirt that, I wore it too much, and even after it got worn out, I cut it so I could have the front of the T-shirt, framed. And even as that happened, I ended up losing that. So, so many moves, so many things happened in life. But that's what I just wanted to share, the best quote ever. The Aboriginals in Australia, "The more you know, the less you need." And I think about the history of the Aboriginals. You know how we came out of Africa, right? And then we ended up in India really creating a large society in both India and in China. And in these societies, we gained a heavy spiritual knowledge that is starting to get lost, I think, to us. But before it was lost, for sure, people continued to evolve east, so that as people pushed through India and pushed through China, they eventually made their way down into Australia. I hear you, Dexter. Just a minute, buddy. And so that's why I'm bringing it up. The Aboriginals they were landlocked in the continent of Australia. So while life went on and the eons moved forward in India and in China, and all the masses of the population started to get involved in the physical and in the scientific world and leaving their spiritual origins, is how I think of it. The Aboriginals in Australia did not leave their spiritual origins. They still have it. I mean, even today, So take a look at that if you are interested in things like this, if you care at all. But definitely don't forget this quote: "The less you need is when you have more knowledge. The more you know, the less you need." It's so good. Have a great day, guys. Peace to all, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, happy day. Bye-bye.